What's going on? It's your boy CJ Goodfellow. We back with the Boxing Clinic. Now, every damn day, my news feed, whether it's in the boxing group, regular news feed, YouTube, I see people always talking about this matchup. It's either you on one side of the fence or you other side of the fence. It ain't too many people that's walking that fence line. And I'm one of those guys that's on the fence line. One guy asked yesterday, was like, where does people get the idea that Keith Thurman can't take body shots? Well, I'll get into that in a minute. But this is a very competitive matchup, and it seems to that, Terrence Crawford started to pot a little bit more the other day by saying that he would favor Keith Thurman. And nothing wrong with that. I always thought Keith Thurman would beat Errol Spence at a point in time. And, let's just break it down real quick. And this is just me off the top, no film study. This is just for fun, but using real hard facts. Talking about it. Now let's talk about Keith Thurman's strength. Start off with the champ. Let's go champ. Good power. When you think about Keith Thurman, good power. Now people say, oh, he hadn't knocked anybody out in a long time. How can he call it one time? Anybody that knows anything about boxing, anything, they know once you step up in competition, the knockouts usually stop coming. That's just the God honest truth. Once you get to an elite level that Thurman's is at, you're dealing with the best. Early in your career, you can knock out a lot of guys, because, a lot of guys had deficiencies. They really verse towards make you look good coming up. Even though you might get that tough journeyman, but, pretty much you have some of your arsenal or talent that those guys don't have. But when you get up to that elite level, world champion level, your knockouts start coming. And people look at, oh, what about Triple G? Triple G ain't fought on the elite level. I'm not saying that Keith Thurman is on the most elite level. But Triple G really ain't fought no damn body. You see, once he fought, one, physical, big, talented middleweight and Danny Jacobs, that knockout didn't come. And, when you step up, the knockouts just, sometimes stop coming. Not saying you never will get a knockout again because it happens. It does happen. But, Keith Thurman's speed is another thing, is another great strength. He got good speed, good foot speed, good hand speed. What else is good about Keith Thurman? His IQ. I think his IQ and his power is his two most. I think that's his two most best, gifted attributes. I think hearing people talk about him in amateurs. The Garcia's talking about how he used to be a flat-footed winger, and now he's grown into a well-rounded boxer who's able to box, hold his ground and let his hands go and let his power be known. He got some versatility as well. He's able to sit down and box some, even though it's been show versus lesser competition. Or he's been known also to be aggressive and come downhill and make his power known. It's basically him right there. Errol Spence strength, good body puncher. Very good body puncher. I think that's one of his strongest attributes. People talk about, Errol Spence's power. Errol Spence got good power, but he doesn't have that, he don't have that, his power is different. You got some guys that got one punch knockout power. It's not that many of those guys walking around anymore. Because everybody's on a higher, level of fighting, elite fighting. And there's some guys that do it by accumulation, and that's, Errol Spence, he got a thumping power, a thudding power. Keith got an explosive type piercing power. I can't really explain it. But if you watch a fight, you'll know what I'm talking about. And another strong attribute about Errol Spence is the ability to get stronger towards fights. Toward the longer the fight go on. He's one of those special guys that get stronger as it goes on, just like Terrence Crawford. And another thing I don't think people give Spence's credit on is the simple fact that he can make some adjustments in the ring as well. As far as the Kell Brook fight, he was able to control distance and use different angles to shoot those body shots so Kell Brook couldn't hold like he did with Sean Porter. He made those adjustments in that fight as well. He's a good athlete. He has good speed as well. Good size, good strength. I think he's another strong, big, physically strong welterweight as well. He got good footwork as far as cutting off the ring as well. And I think that's one of his key factors in this fight is cutting that ring off. And, a lot of people can't cut the ring off. Danny Garcia couldn't cut the ring off, and that pretty much hurt him in the Keith Thurman fight, in my opinion. I think that hurt him a lot. And I think Errol Spence could do that as well. And pretty much that's him in the shell. And the weaknesses, you talk about Keith Thurman. What is Keith Thurman's weaknesses? Body shots. I'm talking about the Collazo thing now. Collazo hurt Keith with a body shot, and Keith said he was about to take the knee, and he pretty much survived. And then Collazo didn't come out for the next round, if I remember right. Don't hold me on that. And that fight ended fishy. And that's one of 2 PBC fights that I seen end fishy around that time. Baby Quillins was a little earlier. Peter Quillin Rosado ended fishy. It looked like Rosado was coming on and beating the shit out of Quillin. And like Collazo was coming on beating the shit out of Keith Thurman. And people tend to forget that. And that fight just ended fishy like Collazo. Somebody just told him like, hey, we need Keith Thurman to be the top guy. Just act hurt. We pay you off. And, that's what a lot of people thought it looked like. But people tend to forget that. But, body shots. Keith Thurman, people wonder about his chin as well. People say, oh, Karras hurt him and all this. But he did stand up to a big puncher in Diego Chavez, who I thought was a solid puncher. Was seen as a big puncher coming in because he had a lot of knockouts. When people wonder about his chin, Errol Spence claims that he's been stopped in the amateurs like cold. He's been dropped before his debut on HBO. He's been on the floor. So, his body and that chin is always a question about Keith Thurman. As far as his other weakness, sometimes he runs. Now, it's the difference between moving around the ring and running. And some of the things that Keith Thurman does is running. The difference, one of the key differences you can spot around a guy that moves around the ring a lot and a guy that runs. A guy that runs just try to get out of harm's way like Keith Thurman. And a guy that moves a lot, he's always thinking of boxing. It's always for a boxing move to make a boxing result. So if a guy moving, he might be moving to set you up for something or in that nature. Sometimes Keith Thurman just legitimately runs to get out of harm's way and to reset and go to a safe haven. And pretty much that's the only, real weaknesses off the top of the dome, without doing film on Keith. And one of Spence's weaknesses is a lot of people feel like he don't have no good defense. People feel like if Keith Thurman's able to hit him with the shots that Kell Brook did, he probably won't be standing there. And talk about that in a minute. Feel like he don't move his head enough. Some people say he might not have a chin. He don't react to punches well. And that's pretty much the book on Errol Spence. People don't know about his chin, and people don't like the lack of defense with Errol Spence. And they feel like Errol Spence walking straight down the pipe on Keith Thurman won't work out for him. And I can't say that I disagree or agree on that until the fight actually plays out, you dig? But I understand where people's coming from, and there are probably some weaknesses about Errol Spence that we haven't seen yet. He hasn't been on the elite level that long yet in the welterweight division. Fighting Kell Brook, he did a lot of good things. And, and another weak thing about Keith Thurman, he's a front runner. He starts off strong and he fades to the finish line. And Earl is the opposite. He might start out a little slow sometimes, but he gets stronger as the fight goes on. Now, talking about strategy for the fight, what would the strategy be? For Keith, I think Keith would have to be aggressive in this fight, I think he would have to press Errol Spence. Errol Spence is a guy that likes to come down the middle. Another weakness, I don't think people think Errol Spence can box on the back foot. I think him having a large Olympic amateur background, I think he can do that, but I don't know how well. But Keith, I think he had to be aggressive in this fight. I think he had to plant, fight in the pocket more. Long range is cool like Kell Brook did. Kell did a pocket and long range fighting. And I think that's cool. I think he needs to stay there. I don't think he needs to run around and move around, because if he runs around or moves around a lot in this fight, Errol Spence is not the rest of the guys that he fought. Errol Spence is a guy that will cut that ring off and make it very, very small and cut down in quarters and make him fight in close corners. And if Errol Spence is getting ahead of steam and he's hitting Spence to the body and he's closing the angles on Spence, if Errol is closing the angles, closing down the distance on Keith Thurman in this fight and killing the body, it's going to be an issue. And using the jab and beating the body down, he probably beat, Keith into submission. That's why I think it's very important for Keith Thurman to keep the fight in the middle of the ring and him to push Errol Spence back and make Errol Spence prove that he can box and be aggressive. And a lot of people say, well, wouldn't that make Keith Thurman's chin more subjective to punishment? Not necessarily. A rock that, I always use this analogy, a rock that comes down the hill, once you get to rolling, he's hard to stop. And if Errol Spence gets to coming down that pipe on that ass, and Keith Thurman moves a lot, then that's trouble for Keith Thurman, in my opinion. But if Keith Thurman can meet the rock before it gets rolling and press the attack, I think that's better off for Keith. And for Errol, I think it's to come forward and be aggressive. Don't have a filling out period. Be aggressive. Try to make Keith move, corner him down, beat the body down, and Keith is going to start to fade around the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th round, 8th or 9th more likely. And if you killing the body, you know, he fades in late fights like I think he usually does. And he does all that move. I think a lot of his movement helps his energy, zaps his energy level. And I think, you know, if Errol is able to cut that ring down like that, you know, make his presence felt, I think he can end up knocking out Keith Thurman. But if Keith Thurman is able to be aggressive and fight at that distance in the pocket and long range to keep, you know, Errol Spence off balance, keep him guessing, I think Keith Thurman can get the knockout as well. We don't know if Errol Spence can handle the power that's coming out of Keith Thurman's hands. But, you know, this is just good water cooler talk. We gone.